Our Sputnik Patrons project has once again been funding wonderful art. And in this case, I'm going to be talking to Luke Sewell, Birmingham-based printmaker and general great bloke, and to talk about a new project that we're funding, helping to fund of his. Luke, it is wonderful to have you here.
Hey, Jonny. It's nice to be here.
The feeling is completely mutual. Can you introduce yourself to everybody? Because not everyone will be acquainted with you.
And of course, my name's Luke. I live in North Birmingham. I am a picture framer and a printmaker, which I've been doing for going on 4 years now. And it's increasingly something that takes up more of my time.
So when we first met, you didn't make prints. If I remember rightly, you were your main creative outlet was photography when we first met. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did like a bit of hobby photography because I think I just bought a film camera when we just met. But I was mostly like a consumer of art. I like watching films and looking at pictures and reading stuff.
What's your journey then? Talk us through your artistic journey, because as people will see, if they haven't already, your work is of a very, very high standard, thoughtfully and practice-wise now, and you've grown very quickly in that. Talk us through your journey.
So art has always been part of my life, I think. Not necessarily always a visual art or printmaking, but growing up, always really enjoyed stories, having them read to me and then reading them for myself. Me and my dad would always be going to the cinema, watching films together, and then gradually got more into like art galleries and stuff growing up. Unfortunately, I took art for GCSE at school, which pummeled all of the joy and inspiration out of sort of artistic practice and that sort of thing. And then it was only really just after you met me and I got involved in some Sputnik stuff that was just getting started up at the time that I really got into just the thought of making and creating art again, which is not a massive plug for Sputnik. I'm not paid up to say that.
But no, he's not paid. Yes, I mean, in this case, you are paid.
I guess, yeah. Then 2017, I was studying a museum studies course, which happened to be based at Birmingham Art School in town, which is a really beautiful old arts and crafts sort of building from the 1800s. Most of the other students there were doing some kind of fine art, and I liked the idea of having some kind of creative outlet again. So I went and bought myself a little lino cut starter set because it's pretty accessible. I knew how to do it from a class at school, I think. It's quite good fun. It's like embodied. It requires you sort of making stuff with your hands, and it's relatively cheap. And like I said earlier, it's something that I've gradually spent more time doing since, and that seems to take up more of my headspace as well.
Yeah. Wow, fantastic. I mean, it's not just the technical proficiency in your work is impressive, but also the themes that you explore, Luke. I mean, I wonder, there's all sorts of things I know that you're working on, but could you talk us a little bit through about your themes and inspirations?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a difficult one to start off with because what I end up making isn't particularly thought through in advance. The thinking almost comes after the fact. I just make stuff that I like the look of, or that I think might be a little bit interesting. And then I find the more I'm focusing on those images that I'm carving, I'm wanting to know more about the history and the context behind some of those. And sort of after the fact, I feel like I sort of need to explain the work backwards, if that makes sense. It can sometimes give the impression though that it's very thought through, which it's not at all. I think a big thing for me is a connection to place, a rootedness in some kind of location, and particularly with land. I think the last few years I've got really into the idea of what connects us to land, particularly stories, a connection to food and that sort of thing. I'm big into Birmingham, my hometown, my adopted hometown, which is often slighted and maligned, but which is filled with such an interesting history, and particularly a really interesting built environment as well, which is often the subject of a lot of the criticism, it being very grey, very concrete. But I think there's a real beauty that can be found in that as well. And that's something that should be really important to Christians and Christian artists as well, is being able to find a beauty, not just in the things that everyone likes, but in a lot of the things that are sort of despised or disregarded or considered to be ugly and not of much use. So Birmingham's concrete, it's car parks, it's abandoned modernist churches, and it's beautiful mid-century library. Sadly departed.
I mean, speaking of modernist churches, I mean, there's one here and one here of yours, and I think one here as well. But you had a magazine with you. Do you want to show us? There was a magazine I know that you just been published in.
It's just come out recently. The Holodeck, which is a wonderful print space in Birmingham, has produced a really lovely Rhizo book, which features some writing from people who live in Birmingham, some wonderful photographs by Birmingham photographers, all of which feature Birmingham, but printed off in this lovely 3-color risograph process. There's some stuff on Spaghetti Junction, some stuff on social housing, and then I had a bit in there on modernist churches, some of which feature behind Jonny.
And they're just they're Luke prints, just to be clear of the link there. An example of the work. Beautiful that it is.
There we go. Yes, and the writing in that was connecting some of what we said before about the disregarded and the forgotten things actually being perhaps the things that are of value and beauty.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. Well, I tell you what, why don't you tell us about the project then? You've got a new project. It's not about buildings. It's not about modernist churches. It's based upon a certain literary figure a brilliant literary figure of the 20th century. Tell us, what's the new project that we're helping to fund?
Yeah, surprisingly, that great literary figure is not J.R.R. Tolkien, who a lot of my references and seems to bounce off of. But a guy who I think occupies a similar sort of space. He's another English Catholic, another great myth that's been written that's deeply connected to, I think, sort of the English soil that we find ourselves on. The writer's GK Chesterton, and the project is to re-illustrate and hopefully publish a version of the Ballad of the White Horse, which is often considered the last great epic poem to be written in the English language. It was originally published in 1911. I've got a lovely illustrated edition here, which was published in 1928, with some little wood blocks in there. And so, yeah, the project is to re-illustrate that poem and represent it, because it's not really in wide circulation as its own book, which I think is a shame. It deserves a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's probably because you know us so well, but Luke Sewell plus GK Chesterton, that's peak Sputnik right there. So how could we refuse to help with that project? But no, it looks like a brilliant project and really looking forward to seeing it come to life. Any ideas on potential completion date?
I'm hoping for the end of March. Having said that, me and Emily, my wife, are expecting our first child within this week. So how that will affect my practice is the great unknown at the moment.
Well, there's your biggest creative project of the coming times is right
exactly
there,
and my finest work yet. It's mostly Emily, to be honest.
Well, actually, it's kind of 50-50 biologically, but anyway, we won't go into that. Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and everyone, keep your eyes peeled for Luke's work. And if you'd like to support more work like this, you know where to go. Sputnik patrons on our website. We'd love to keep supporting work like Luke's. But for the time being, see you later.